Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It, a podcast created by the FUSE, an outreach initiative within the College of Applied Studies and recorded on campus at the Elliott School of Communication here at Wichita State University. I'm Bobby Berry.
And I'm Jessica Newman. Today, we are taking a trip down memory lane in a special recap episode of Season 1. So we're actually preparing to launch Season 2 later this month. And
Yay.
So exciting. And we really just want to take a moment to appreciate kind of where we started, what we've learned, who we've met, and where we're headed along this awesome journey.
Exactly. We had a concept and a drive for this passion project, but it's gone places that we never could have expected. This episode is a little bit different, and as it's the first episode, that is just Jessica and I. Typically, we interview people and elevate other voices on this show, but today we want to just have a conversation about what this has all been like in the past year and where the show is going to next.
Is it weird that I'm kind of nervous that we don't have
right?
other people? We always rely on these fascinating people we bring in, and now it's like. So before we really get into it, I want to say thank you to everyone listening throughout Season 1. We appreciate all of you, whether you're someone who's listened to every episode, or maybe you've just caught one or two, or perhaps this is even your first one. But as a bit of context, the Let's Talk About It podcast was spearheaded initially by Bobby. So he was the one that saw this opportunity, saw something that he wanted to do and offer to our WSU community and beyond. And then he brought me on board to kind of help bring the whole passion to life. So to begin the conversation, Bobby, do you think you could just start by kind of explaining how the idea came to your brain and why you wanted to pursue it in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know me well enough now that there's always a lot going on in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And when I initially started the FUSE, I think 4 years ago at this point, I wanted to do something different. So I'm a firm believer in being able to find creative ways to bridge the gap and kind of knock down the silos and break down the barriers and the walls between community and campus and faculty and staff and, whatever. So for me, I was like, well, I love to talk.
Yeah.
I like to have conversations, intentional conversations. And for me, it's how do we bring unity? And I think the best way to do that is sometimes through conversation and understanding.
Right.
And so for me, let's talk about conversations and topics that we all know about, but we're not really privy to having multiple voices share their perspective on their lived experiences on that particular topic. So when I kind of sat and thought about, how do we take this up to the next level and what's next for the FUSE? And this came to my head and I was just like, well, I don't know how to make it happen. I don't, right? I was like, but I know Jessica and I think she can help me make it happen. And fast forward to here we are headed into Season 2, combined total between Season 1 and Season 2. We've done 16 episodes recorded, which is crazy.
So crazy.
But yeah, it's been a great ride and I'm so excited.
Yeah. So, once you had decided it was going to happen and everything, we sort of had to figure out how to pull it off. And I remember you approached me to help because, you knew that I knew how to record and I taught in this Elliott school and all of that. But I remember talking about you wanting a co-host and it crossed my mind. I was like, I kind of feel like maybe I could do it, but I'm like embarrassed to say I could, or, and at that point we knew each other, but we've gotten to know each other over these past 16 episodes, significantly better. And I remember being really nervous, like, would he even want me to be the co-host? I don't know. And I don't remember what I said, but I just remember being like, well, if you want, I could probably do it. and then now here we are. So, as I think about back to us kind of figuring out how this all comes together, I think it took a little while. We've got Andrew on as our producer as well, so it's kind of the three of us that sort of plan each episode. And I think it took us a while to sort of find our flow, but I've been really encouraged by how different we are and how complementary our sort of styles are. My gaps you fill in and vice versa. And so Bobby really is like the logistics champion basically, and I've never met someone more organized and connected and detail oriented and all of these things. And so Bobby, you and then Andrew as well take on that beginning part of I mean, we decide topics together, but kind of fleshing out the concepts and booking the guests and organizing the content and all of that. And then I kind of come in on the second part of recording it and then all the post-production, posting, distribution, blah, blah, blah. So it's been kind of fun being able to capitalize on both of our strengths, I think. And of course, use the awesome facilities here in the Elliott School. I love being able to use this equipment to, as we've mentioned before, elevate voices. I think it's been something that I'm proud of as a faculty member, and I've enjoyed sharing with our students and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how we pulled it off, I suppose.
Yeah, and when I thought about, the whole process of planning topic ideas and figuring out who it would be best to speak to some of these topics, really wanted to make sure that we were utilizing people that are in our lives and in a lot of the places and spaces that we are on this campus. And so for me, it was about being intentional when we would have some of our meetings and we would talk about, these possible topics. For me, then I would immediately start thinking, okay, who could or who does or who, right? And because we always really, we made a conscious effort to make sure we have a professional and or someone who is a professional or at least kind of an expert in that particular world or that particular area.
Right.
We always want to make sure that we have a student voice that is elevated in some capacity. And then I think we've done a really good job of activating different people within the community. We've had quite a few really well-known names, as far as especially on our campus. On our show, which has been great, and we've had a lot of students doing some pretty amazing things both on and off campus that I think sometimes just within the hustle and bustle of what we do, these are some voices that we don't necessarily hear a lot from, right? And so for me, it was like finding that nice balance of voices that we hear often and maybe that we just don't know in a different way. And then some of the voices that we don't hear too much about and being able to kind of have some of their insights. So I think it's been really cool just to be able to kind of figure out topics. And I know for season 2, we were a little bit more intentional about having topics that were a little bit more, I wouldn't say controversial, but things that are a little bit more relevant, things that were very timely, topics that were a little uncomfortable.
A little less black and white, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm really excited about what's to come for next season for sure.
Yeah, I like how you were talking about the different variety of guests that we've had, because it's very interesting when people come in, because you're right, we've had some people that do media appearances and interviews and public speak and all that all the time, and so this is something that they know, something that they do well, and they come in and they do an amazing job, and we learn from them, and but it's not it's not intimidating to them, it's not different, it's not they kind of knew what to expect, right?
Yeah.
And then we have other guests that come in and they're like, you want to listen to my stories and you want to put them, you want to publish this, and those are honestly kind of my favorite, to hear them tell their story and realize that it's appreciated and it's important and it's not just their story, but it's something that we can all learn from.
Right.
So kind of moving from that, for me, the guests on the show are the show, right? It's what, it's what makes our show, and it's been the coolest learning experience for me to get to interview all of these people. Yeah. I'm dropping the number now, but I counted the amount of people that we interviewed in season 1, so don't quote me on this, but I believe we were somewhere in 23 to 26-ish somewhere. Nice. Now I wish I'd written down the number, but whatever. It was in the 20s. So that many different voices. So I'm curious, I would love for both of us to kind of just run through a couple of memorable either moments or interviews or people or, whatever. So why don't you start?
I think, and this is taking it back to our very first episode, I think for me, episode 1, we talked about first generation and kind of just peeling back the layers of what that looks like on our campus. And I think it became a buzzword on our campus, right? Yes. And so being able to have people who work in that space, but specifically a person who stood out for me was Tony Ibarra, and hearing about his experience as a Hispanic male and kind of some of the things that he's navigated through, and being such a leader on our campus, and some of the upbringing that he brought to the table, and what it meant for him to be first generation, and why it was so important, and why he wore that as a badge of honor, and just seeing some of the accomplishments that this young man has had, and realizing that, you know, this word of first generation that at some point was really looked at as, oh, you know, these first generation kids, you know, that they're gonna have such a hard time, they're gonna struggle, and then being able to hear about, you know, how he has just done some of the most amazing things, and just as a person, just a great individual that I have just really come to respect so much. And I think so for me, that was really a highlight, because I know Tony, but I've never gotten to kind of hear him talk about his own personal experiences, and how he really turns some of the struggle into triumph, really. So that was such a highlight for me.
And he's so humble. So it's kind of cool getting him into a place where he's comfortable talking about some of that stuff that he wouldn't have never mentioned before.
He's a great guy. What about you? What's one for you?
So I was thinking about this, and I think as a general, I don't know, overall, what I've been most astounded by are our students, and learning about some of them, like you just said, in ways that we haven't before. And so episode 7 was about leadership, and we had Rija Khan, the student body president for Student Government Association. And I remember being really fascinated and interested listening to her talk, and listening to not just the accomplishments that she's had, which of course are many, but also just kind of her perspective, her, you know, intuition, her thoughts about life and the world and our campus. And again, similar to what you said to Tony, I mean, we've got some great students on this campus, and we've got some great leaders, and Wichita State brings to life these students with so much potential, and lets them become who they want to be and who we know they can be. And I think that was very evident with Rija, and certainly many of our other students as well. But that was one that kind of just hit me, I think.
Yeah. And I think another one for me would be episode 4. So we talked about imposter syndrome, and we had the one and only Danielle Johnson that was here, and she was just kind of talking about, you know, the balance of being a woman of color in predominantly white spaces and places, with the work that she's done, really spearheading and driving home diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only in her professional life, but definitely in her personal life as well. And so to get to hear and to see her speak about it so passionately, and some of the things that she's endured, and a lot of the way in which she advocates for folks who look like her and those who do not look like her.
Right.
And so for me, it was really nice to see someone in our age group that's been so instrumental in really moving the needle, not only on this campus, but within the community as well. So being able to just hear her talk about that was really motivating and inspiring for me. And sometimes it's interesting, because a lot of these folks that are come on, I know in some capacity, but still being able to see and hear them speak about their lives and their experiences in such a vulnerable, transparent way that sometimes I've never seen, that has been so memorable for me.
Yeah. And I think for my last kind of memorable moment, I will go to episode 6, and two people kind of stood out to me, and specifically in the way that they interacted with each other. And you know how there are some people that just, when they come into a room, the dynamic changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, sometimes it's for good, sometimes it's not so good. But there are some people that just bring a presence with them when they come in places. And I feel like that episode was just packed full of just, you know, fire, just fire in this room. And so the two that I kind of want to talk about are Tajinay Stocker, one of our students here, and then, graduated now.
Yeah.
And
married recently.
She got married?
Yes.
I knew they
recently.
were engaged.
Yeah,
I did not know the wedding happened.
Yeah, within the last couple of weeks.
Okay,
yeah.
so I'm not behind by too much. I'll have to go stalk her social media and look for pictures. So Tajinay, and then also Kyle Ellison on that one.
One and only.
Yes, another one and only. And what I loved about that is, so I knew Kyle personally. Tajinay I hadn't met until that day, and I loved first listening to her. I mean, the amount of times that any of the other people in the room said something to the effect of like, we don't deserve her. Like, we should vote for her for something. Like, this girl is, I mean, she's making waves in really big ways. And she has more passion than I've seen in, 10 other people combined.
Yeah.
So that first, just experiencing her, and that's the way I would put it, is not even just like meeting her, but experiencing her, was huge and powerful. And I think she was created for the purpose of changing the world. I mean, I know that sounds excessive possibly, but I really think that she was. So then the second part of that is Kyle, who, besides being incredible comedic relief and just so much fun, he's also insightful. He's also one of the best listeners and observers that I think I've ever met. And he notices things about people, and he is not afraid to say things that he notices. And he connects people. He capitalizes on people's strengths. He maximizes relationships. And I've noticed that about him for years. And so it was interesting seeing him talk to Tajinay as Tajinay, explained what she's done in Wichita and then voiced her desire to leave Wichita and to move on to a more progressive city and to go someplace where she felt like she could have a bigger impact. And to hear him push back on that and say, why do you think, like, this is the city that grew you and you've made an impact here, and why do you think that you would make a bigger impact in a more progressive city? Like, can't you make a bigger impact here? And listening to her grapple with that concept, and inevitably, maintain her position, but just listening to them both sort of, as Kyle, someone who is very similarly involved in engaging and improving the community and has chosen very intentionally to work within the city of Wichita. It was just fascinating. It was so fascinating.
And I think it's the highest viewed podcast episode that we've had from season 1.
I think it was. Yeah.
It was really amazing. And one of the things that I'm so proud of is that we have managed to just have the most diverse groups of voices or people at this table.
100%.
Black, Asian, Hispanic, white.
Different ages.
Yes. So I'm so happy when we talk about really moving the needle, that we've been able to get some of the people that we've got and at this table, that just have such diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise. And I feel like the range of topics that we've had have just been really, really strong. And so I'm really, really proud of that. But with that being said, it obviously hasn't all been easy, and we've definitely faced some challenges along the way and have had to push ourselves out of our comfort zones for sure, and definitely more than once. And I think for me, when I think about the challenges that I've had, one, selfishly, it's just been the time, right?
Sure.
Because we're both so busy.
That's real.
Trying to figure out how to do these, right? How to schedule them and how to get people in here, and working with 3 to 4 different schedules of people, trying to book them to get them here, and the script writing that you're doing, and just that part has been challenging. And I feel like we've finally gotten to a routine and a rhythm that works for us. And so that's been great. And I think this has improved my ability to communicate. A lot of the work that I do is really communication based, just whether for me teaching or coaching, whatever. And so I'm talking to people a lot, but I think this has allowed me to even to be a better listener as well. I think that has definitely improved that skill and helped me to grow even more in that area. So and I think the last thing I'll say is just, even thinking and looking ahead, right, and how this is ever evolving, and making sure that we don't get in a rut and about being creative and innovative still, and what does that look like. And so I think, those are just some of the things that we'll probably grapple with. But overall, I think those have probably been the things that I've taken away from our experience thus far.
Yeah. You kind of stole my thunder on the listening thing, because that's where I was going to go with it, is that, you and I mean, we're both instructors here, right? So we spend a lot of our time talking to people, a lot of our time teaching people, a lot of our time taking what we have been trained on and what we know and imparting that to people who don't know it yet. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what this show has been about is us learning, and our listeners learning and listening. And it's been challenging sometimes for me to, I have had a lot of fear going into some of our episodes in some of the topics that I know that I don't know anything about. I mean, we've gone into some topics that I don't have a lived experience or any sort of a background foundation on. And that has given me, to use one of the titles of one of our shows, some imposter syndrome of who am I to talk, about this? And I think the way that I've grappled with that and figured out, what it is we bring on voices that are relevant, and we listen to them, and I learn from them, and we converse, as a group, and recognizing that you don't have to be an expert to talk about something.
Right.
It's good to bring on the people who are to talk about it, but
absolutely
recognizing that some of these hard topics, it's okay not to know everything about it. It's okay if you say something wrong. It's okay. We want things to be authentic. We want them to be real. And yes, that's been scary for me, because if I say something wrong, it's recorded.
Right.
But also I edit it. So, I mean, I can take it out. So that's been something I think that's been challenging. And also, I am generally somebody who is great at big ideas and terrible at follow through. So it's just one of those things. I love to start things and then I get bored. And so the fact to me that we have recorded 16 episodes of this, and we are literally done with a full season, and we've stuck to it, and we've finished it. Not finished it. It's just getting started. But you know what I mean.
Right. I mean, did you ever doubt that, though?
Well, okay, so yeah, kind of. And what I mean by that is, honestly, I credit that to you. It's just one of those things. Sometimes I just drift when things get hard or boring or whatever. And I think the two of us together have, held each other up when the other has been like, oh, this is too much.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm really proud of us.
Yeah,
I'm proud of what we've been able to create.
I am too.
I don't know what I expected from it originally, but I was just like, let's try it, see what happens.
If there's one thing that I don't like to do, I don't give up easily, right? So for me, I'm like,
I do sometimes.
We started this thing, we're going to ride this out.
So in 20 years, we're going to be on episode 21.
Right, with our walkers. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, that was really insightful.
So, okay. We've done a lot of sort of rehashing, reminiscing, thinking about what has happened. So what now? Where are we going with all of this? Bobby, you and I have put a lot of thought into preparing for season 2. Mm-hmm. We've recorded a lot for it already. And we're digging deeper than we ever have. I remember I can't remember if it was a phone call or a text or what, but I remember you being like, hey, how do you feel about more controversial topics in season 2? And I remember thinking, what is he talking? Where are we going with this?
Yeah.
And even as we say that, I don't know that controversial is necessarily the right word.
Right.
Some of them are. But those deeper, less black and white, more nuanced topics, I think, are kind of what we're pushing into.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from a place of we feel a little bit more experienced now. We feel more comfortable with the platform and the format of the show, and we're ready to push a little bit deeper. And I'm excited to see where that goes, because from the beginning, that's been our goal, has been to bring authentic conversations. We've wanted to speak truth and elevate a variety of perspectives and allow the listeners to draw their own conclusions, as opposed to us telling people, what it is. So I'm excited about that for season 2. Do you have anything you'd add about season 2?
Yes, I am so excited about it. And I'm just going to throw out some of the topics that we're covering.
Do it.
So we're talking about undergraduate research and what that looks like. That's huge here at Wichita State. We're talking about students and just the aftermath of COVID. So we're talking directly with students who had COVID. We're talking about navigating as a person who identifies anywhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. That was a really deep one.
Oh, it was awesome.
That was deep. And we talk about curriculum and social justice and how those two worlds meld together. Social media versus mainstream media. That was a really fun one. I really enjoyed that particular conversation. I think we had such a wide range of voices that spoke to that topic. So I'm really excited for folks to hear that. And it was really interesting. We talked about religion.
Yep.
Right? We talked about religion in higher education. And that one I walked away, was like, that was insightful. And then returning adult and kind of how does an individual who's a returning adult navigate? And I think that's a topic that a lot of people do not discuss. And so it was really interesting. And I was really inspired after I left that particular topic. And then policing and what does that look like in our community? And we had quite a few voices speak to that. We were able to get quite a few officers that were all diverse, right? We had a Hispanic officer, a white male, a black male. So that was the perspectives that we're bringing to that were really great. So that's kind of our topics coming up in season 2.
Yeah, as somebody who was sort of raised in that, when you are at, Christmas dinner, don't talk about religion or politics. I love this because I've always kind of pushed back against that, and talking about things like this has always sort of been right up my alley. Okay, so as we close up this conversation, I do want to take just a second to talk directly to all of you that are listening. So, you are the reason that we're here. And one hope that we have going forward is to really be able to lean into listener-guided content. And so we welcome you guys to help us continue to grow this show by truly investing in the content that we're creating. So please, if you'd like to be on the show, if you have a topic that you'd love to see us tackle, if you have feedback about something that you've heard, reach out. We're here to listen and we're here to learn, and we would absolutely love to hear from each and every one of you.
And so, as I stated earlier, we've got an incredible lineup for season 2, and Jess and I are just so excited about it. And that all starts at the end of this month. Friday, August 27th, we're going to have our first episode of season 2, and we're specifically talking about all things related to the pandemic. And so we're a year and a half into this thing, and I think a lot of people feel talked out at this point, but we think it's really important to intentionally process the collective trauma that we've all experienced and what the implications of that are for our society and for our world going forward. And I think when you guys listen to that episode, hearing some of the folks that we brought to the table talking about, the preparation and planning of what a pandemic is looking like on our campus, and folks who recently had the vaccine. This when the vaccine was really early, and kind of what that experience was, and students who actually had COVID and the mental and emotional toll it had on them. I think the way in which we approached that episode and the diversity of thought was really good. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really powerful episode, and I think it's a good start to season 2. Because the thing about this pandemic is that everybody has experienced it differently.
Absolutely.
The lived experience from my students compared to me, and my colleagues compared to me, and all of these different things. I mean, it's so different depending who you are. And it's a good launch to season 2, because that's what season 2 is about listening to others and empathizing with others and appreciating that perspective can really be reality in a lot of cases. And we can't solve problems and love people well if we don't first listen to and appreciate their stories. So I'm just so excited to share all of this with everyone.
Absolutely.
We've been preparing it for so long.
Right. And so one of the things I just want to say, and Jess and I definitely share the same sentiment. Thank you again for joining us today, and definitely joining us and being part of a journey on season 1, for listening to this recap episode. I've loved remembering all the moments and experiences that have brought us to where we are right now, and I'm really excited about what's to come. And as always, thanks for listening, and catch us next time on Let's Talk About It.
Bye.